3 weeks before the cave, I was on the verge of a granite outcrop in the Sierra Nevada, with a brush in one hand and the weight of a career half lost in the other. The light of dawn was soft, painting the rocks a yellow that looked like old paper. I bent down, brushing aside centuries of dust, and there it was, what I had barely dared to dream of, a dense vein of metal, tantalum. At its side, flashes of yttrium and terbium, almost singing in the silence. I didn't cry. I didn't shout for joy. I just sat back on my heels and let the air catch in my throat. This wasn't just a breakthrough, it was a resurrection. Every funding request rejected, every conference denied to me, every time someone asked, "Don't you feel it's time to retire?" All of that was beating under the surface of this rock. I took a photo, then another, and then, without thinking too much, I called Javier. His voice sounded sleepy. "Mom, I found something," I said, trying to sound firm. "It's important." There was a pause. "How important?" "Rare earths, pure, intact. In the eastern ridge of the mountain range, near that site I showed you in 2016. Another pause. Then his voice sharpened. "Did you mark the coordinates?" "Of course." I hesitated. "I know things have been distant, but if you want, I'll go," he said. "Just the two of us, like before." Like before, when he was 10 years old and thought my rock samples were treasures, when he packed snacks for our exploratory walks and asked if there were dinosaurs, when he still had wonder instead of distrust. He booked the flight that same night. I prepared the maps, the satellite images, the spectrographic analysis. Maybe I packed something else too, a thin thread of hope I didn't want to admit I was still carrying inside. 2 days later, I found him at the trailhead. He hugged me stiffly. I pretended not to notice. He asked about the discovery, the logistics, the value. I gave him numbers and avoided the word invaluable. The sky was clear when we began the ascent. He carried the heavier backpack. I led the way. The Widow's Hollow awaited us up ahead. The path wound between low pines and oaks, the air light and fresh, with a scent of mineral powder and early autumn. Javier walked behind me, his steps firm but strangely measured, as if counting them. He didn't speak much, but he never did on walks. As a child, he followed me with pockets full of quartz and questions. Now, at 29 years old, he walked with a silence I couldn't decipher. I looked at him once. His backpack seemed heavier than mine, more bulging than necessary for a 2-day trip. "Are you sure you want to carry all that?" He raised his gaze, barely shaken. "I'm just being cautious." I nodded. "Well, I didn't bring more. I hope you packed coffee." He smiled faintly, neither warm nor cold, only practiced. We climbed in sections, resting on sun-drenched rocks when my knees hurt or his cell phone vibrated. I noticed he wasn't answering calls, just looking at the screen, pressing a button and putting it away. I didn't ask who it was. I had learned the hard way that asking often meant hearing less than I wanted. When we stopped for water, I saw him bend down to check the straps of his backpack. Everything he did seemed rehearsed. I told myself I was imagining things. I was still getting used to being with him without the barrier of screens and Sunday dinners. "I'm glad you came," I said in a low voice. He didn't look up. "They're excited." "It's important, isn't it?" "It is." He stood up, wiped his hands. "Then let's get there." We arrived at the ridge above the old trail by mid-afternoon. The Widow's Hollow rested in the shadow, a wide mouth carved into the granite. I had found it years ago on a failed mapping trip. I recorded it and saved it with other almosts. As we approached, the air cooled noticeably, moist with a hint of metal. Javier took a step forward and turned on his headlamp without being asked. He was ready to ready. I adjusted my straps and followed him inside. The cave swallowed sounds. Even our boots on the stone floor seemed dull, as if the rock had no intention of remembering our presence. The air was fresh, almost humid, and smelled of something ancient, metal, dust, time. I went forward with my headlamp, sweeping the uneven walls until I saw it, a vein of dark, gleaming material crossing the cave wall diagonally, thicker than I remembered, intact, undisturbed. I bent down, heart racing, and ran my fingers over it. "It's real," I whispered. "Oh my God, it's real." I opened my case and started collecting samples, tagging, photographing, noting coordinates. My mind spun with possibilities, funding, preservation permits, perhaps even a repair for the years lost in the darkness. Behind me, Javier walked slowly, his lantern's beam flashing on the walls. "I told you," I said, half laughing. "You thought I was chasing ghosts, but this is historical." He didn't answer. I heard him take a few steps back. Then the sound stopped. Silence. "Javier," I called over my shoulder. "Come here," he said. Something in his voice was wrong, too gentle, too careful. I stood up, putting away the last vial in the sample box, and turned around. He was standing 3 meters away, next to a narrowing in the wall, his light shining on the wet surface behind him. "What's up?" I asked. He smiled, not one of those smiles that reach the eyes, not one that warms you. "Just come here." I took a step forward, my heart slowing for reasons I didn't yet understand. He reached out, drawing me into a sudden embrace. His arms wrapped around my waist with force. "I love you," he whispered near my ear. "You know that, right?" Something in me stopped. "Javier, I love you too. I just need to fix things." And then, without warning, his hands pushed. My back hit the stone. My head struck something hard, and my knees gave way as I fell to the ground. I heard the scrape of his boots as he ran. "Javier," I shouted, stumbling to my feet. "What the hell are you doing?" A low roar echoed in the cave. "Javier." Then came the first crack, followed by another. The entrance collapsed in a roar of dust and granite. I ran forward until my palms crashed into solid rock, no fissures, no spaces. I pounded with my fists, screamed, choked on the dust, and then, through the wall, his voice, "You chose rocks over family. Now they're all you have." Silence, and then complete darkness. I don't know how long I lay there, minutes or hours. Time in a sealed cave is more an idea than a fact. Silence pressed against my ears, harder than any sound. My flashlight blinked once, then stabilized. I crawled to a flat section of the wall and leaned against it, the cold stone anchoring what little sanity I had left. I tried to think clearly: supplies, water, escape points, but my thoughts returned to Javier, his face, his voice, that last sentence, "You chose rocks over family." I laughed, short and dry, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. I had chosen survival, integrity, discovery. He had chosen theft. I was starting to accept that I might die there when I saw a flash at the edge of my light. Not a reflection, not dust falling, movement. I froze. It came closer. A man emerged, slowly and deliberately, with a thick beard and alert, cautious eyes. He held a flashlight in one hand and a utility knife tied to his side, but made no move toward me. "I'm not here to harm you," he said. His voice was firm, low. I stayed on the ground, clutching my flashlight as if it were a weapon. He took a step into the light. "My name is Leandro. I've been living down here for a while." I stared at him, unsure if I believed he was real. How did you find me?" "I was nearby. I heard the collapse. That was no accident." I didn't speak, my voice breaking. "My son did it." He nodded once, as if unsurprised. "Are you alone?" he asked. "I was," I said. "And it seems I still am." He looked past me to the debris. He sealed the only ventilation duct. "Smart." "Cold. We don't have much time. There's no way out here. There's a flooded tunnel further in. It connects to an underground river that exits near the base. Narrow, cold, dangerous, but it's there." I didn't answer, just stared at him. His presence was unreal, too calm, too solid, as if the mountain had found a voice. "I can take you," he said, "but you'll have to decide soon." I stood slowly, my body aching, head pounding, heart numb. "Okay," I whispered. "Show me." He turned without another word, and I followed into the darkness. The tunnel narrowed to little more than a crack in the rock. I looked at it, heart racing. The idea of forcing my body into that blind, airless space clawed at every instinct I had left. Leandro didn't hesitate. He adjusted his lantern, knelt, and slipped into the crack as if it were routine. His voice echoed from ahead, low and calm. 5 meters. You'll feel the slope. Stay close to the rock. If you panic, stop and breathe." I got on my knees, the stone biting my palms. The flashlight on my head barely illuminated the walls around me. I heard water dripping, running somewhere far off, but it only made the silence between drops more violent. I crawled forward. Each breath felt shorter. I could hear my own heart in my ears. Halfway through, I stopped. The rock above pressed against my back, the air thinner than moments before. "I can't," I gasped. My chest burned. From ahead, his voice came. "You're doing fine, Marina. Just a few more meters. Tell me something." "What?" "Why geology?" The question was so absurd it anchored me. I let out a shaky breath. Because I liked the idea that history leaves clues, that the earth doesn't forget. "That's good," he said softly. "Now don't let it bury you." I closed my eyes and pushed forward. One elbow, then the other. Each centimeter gained. My body trembled, but I kept going, not because I trusted him, not at all, but because the part of me Javier tried to seal was now stronger, stronger than fear. When the tunnel widened, I breathed real air, cold, heavy, real. Leandro reached out and pulled the last few centimeters of me through. I collapsed beside him, muscles trembling, face slick with sweat and dust. He handed me water. I drank slowly, hands shaking. "You're stronger than you think," he said. I nodded, throat tight. "And you? Why are you down here?" He paused. "I worked in rescues at the falls. A call came too late. My wife and daughter were on that mountain." I didn't ask for more details. We rested for a few minutes in the widened chamber, dimly lit by his flashlight. Then he stood and offered his hand again. I took it, held by more than just fingers, and together we continued toward the sound of the river. The last tunnel was narrow but dry. We climbed hand over hand until light filtered through a veil of thick vines. It was golden, unfamiliar, too alive to be real. Leandro pushed aside the vegetation, and I stepped out first into the free air. The sun hit my skin like something sacred. I stood there, blinking, unsure if my legs would hold. The air smelled of sweet pine, full of birdsong and distant wind. I knelt and pressed my hand to the grass. It bent beneath my fingers, soft and wet, and I whispered a thank you to no one in particular. Leandro stepped out behind me and let the vines fall back into place. He didn't speak, just gave me a moment to feel the world again. We descended slowly, following a barely marked path. It wound through the forest, then cut into a gravel trail. In the distance, I could see the outline of Valle Claro, small, orderly, alien. My legs ached with every step, but I didn't stop. 3 hours later, we reached the edge of the village. We must have looked like ghosts, torn clothes, faces smeared with soot and dirt. People stared as we passed. We entered a small diner near the main street. I don't know why, maybe the smell of fried eggs or the need to sit without giving explanations. I slid onto a bench in the back while Leandro ordered coffee. Then I saw it. A television flickered on the counter, showing a newscast. My name was across the bottom. Javier was outside a cabin I recognized, our cabin. He was dressed in black and spoke into a microphone, eyes wet with rehearsed pain. "It was a tragic accident," he said. "We were exploring a new section when the collapse happened. I did everything I could." The waitress turned, saw my face, and stopped. "Ma'am, are you okay?" I couldn't speak. My body had been through hell, but this broke something deeper. He was already rewriting the ending. He was already claiming the story. Leandro stood by my side. "There's a sheriff in town." The waitress nodded. 2 blocks away, end of the main street. We didn't wait for the coffee. They called county detectives. Plans formed quickly, plain clothes, hidden cameras. They would lure him back to the site with a meeting of interested investors to talk, to lie. I waited in the back seat of an unmarked SUV, parked behind a cluster of pines overlooking the Widow's Hollow. I could see his Jeep from the ridge. It was already there. Another vehicle was there too, sleek, dark. The investors. His voice carried even before I saw him, laughing, smooth, confident. I could almost see him gesticulating, weaving the story. "She was brilliant," he said. But the collapse was swift. I barely got out alive. I did everything I could. The detective next to me whispered into his radio, "Get ready." I opened the door and stepped out. The gravel crunched under my boots. Heads turned. Javier's voice stopped mid-sentence. His face went pale, colorless. He looked like someone who had just seen the ghost of the lie he thought he'd buried. "Hi, Javier," I said. He staggered back. "Mom, how you told the world I died? You blocked the duct. Did you bring tools to seal me?" "No, wait, listen, not me." The detective stepped forward. "We have your voice recorded. We have physical evidence. Statements of witnesses. Javier Solis, you are under arrest for the attempted murder of Marina Solis." The cuffs clicked. He didn't resist, just looked at me as if I had clawed my way out of the stone with my own hands. As they led him away, he muttered, "It wasn't supposed to be like this." I didn't answer. I turned toward the trees where Leandro waited by the unmarked car. His face asked no questions. Mine offered no answers. The site was silent again, except for the wind blowing through the pines. As the patrol car drove off, dust swirling behind it, I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel anything. One of the investors, his face already recalibrated, approached. He started talking about contracts, liabilities, how the Institute might still be interested in collaborating. I kept walking. My boots found the edge of the forest where Leandro stood, half in the shadows. He didn't come closer, just waited. "He's gone," I said. Leandro nodded. "And you?" I looked at the scattered gear, the place where I almost died, the hole in the ground that thought it would swallow me. It all seemed smaller now, like a place that once mattered. And now it didn't. "I don't carry it," I said. "What he did, who he was, that weight won't go with me." Leandro didn't smile, but I felt something settle between us. Not consolation, not absolution, just a silent understanding that we had both dragged something dark and left it without needing to name it. We stood there one more moment, the widow's hollow behind, Valle Claro somewhere ahead. I didn't want to mark this place with grief anymore. It wasn't sacred, it wasn't cursed. It was just rock, just matter. I turned and walked, with Leandro by my side. We didn't talk. There was nothing more to say about the cave and everything ahead. The Institute of Geology hadn't changed. The same fluorescent lights buzzed. The same polished floors stretched through familiar corridors. But when I walked through those doors again, I didn't feel like I was returning. I felt like I was arriving. Director Vargas greeted me in the lobby, his handshake warm, his eyes sharper than I remembered. "We reviewed your findings," he said. "We're naming the site Marina's Crest." I nodded as the words sank into a quiet place inside me. Recognition was never the goal, but something in being seen and believed restored pieces I didn't know were missing. Leandro stayed out of it all. He never asked for credit, though he attended safety reviews, helped train new interns in field protocols, and mapped an improved access route along the outer ridge. Most days, we didn't talk about the cave, but some nights, when the lab was quiet and the corridors darkened, he brought 2 cups of tea to my office. We would sit on the balcony by the Mineral Archives room. He never asked if I was okay, just sat close enough to feel human, far enough to let me breathe. One night, he leaned back and said, "I'd like to stay. If you'll let me." I turned toward him, not because I needed saving, not because I owed him anything, but because there was a kind of calm between us that felt earned. "You don't have to live underground to be safe," I said. He smiled. "I'm learning. It does in you. Not as permission, as recognition." We sat in silence, warm cups in hand, the soft hum of campus life in the distance. The stars above were faint but present. Tomorrow, I would present my findings. Tonight, I just let myself be here, alive, whole, unburied.